What's going on, dialysis? What's going on, dialysis disciples? So let me ask you this, dialysis warriors. How many of you are nervous about starting dialysis? This video is for those of you who just started or know you're going to be starting soon. And you're worried about what life will look like once you begin. If that's you, you're in the right place tonight. You're in the right place tonight. Welcome, family. If you're watching this live, put Team Live, hashtag Team Live in the chat. If you're watching the replay, put Team Replay in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and share. We post these replays on YouTube as well. So for those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Troy Sneed. I'm a 25 plus year dialysis warrior. And now, through the grace of God, I help other warriors reclaim their energy, sharpen their mental clarity, and thrive rather than merely survive on dialysis. Tonight, I want to talk directly to those of you who are about to start dialysis, right? Or maybe you just started. If that's you, put one in the chat, right? I want to save you years of trial and error, frustration and hopelessness, right? That I went through and that other warriors went through, right? Who didn't have someone to walk them through this journey, right? We're going to cover the 3 biggest mistakes new patients make when starting dialysis and how to avoid them so you're not, so you can step into treatment with confidence and clarity and hope. That sound good? All right, let's get into it. Right, because the truth is, these 3 mistakes are really common, right? And I see most every new patient fall into them. But if you catch them early, you can change your whole journey. Who's ready for the first mistake, right? Before we get into this, let me ask you, are you new to dialysis, or is it something the doctors told you you're going to have to start soon? Let me get some comments in the chat so I can know who I'm talking to, right? So the first mistake, right, that new dialysis patients make is, right, you don't ask enough questions, right? We just accept dialysis for what it is. Like, oh, well, a doctor told me I got to do this thing or I'm going to die. How many of you, that's you. How many of you are new to this journey and the only information you got about it is that if you don't do it, you're going to die? That was me. That's what they told me, right? They told me you got to do dialysis or you're going to die, right? And I've learned through education and questions and 25 years of going through this, that's not the case, guys. Depending on where you are in your journey, right, you can reverse the kidney disease, but this is not what we're talking about today, right? If you want me to do something on that, we can do something on that, right? But I'm speaking to the people who are starting dialysis and are new to it, right? So when most people start dialysis, they just sit in the chair, right? They let the techs hook them up and just sit there and hope for the best. They don't ask questions, right, about their treatment, about what to expect, or even what they should be eating or what their numbers or their labs mean, right? And here's something you have to remember, guys. Like, they all work for you, right? They are there to serve you, right? Your insurance, if you're blessed enough to have insurance coverage, Medicare or whatever it may be, to pay for your treatments, right? Regardless, they work for you, right? And you have to remember that. You have to come in with that posture, right? God put these people in your life to serve you, right? So if there's something that you don't understand, something that you need to know, don't just accept it, right? Ask the questions, right? When you don't ask questions, you miss out on the ownership of your health, right? You become passive, and dialysis starts to feel like a prison instead of a process, right? Um, right. I like to teach my clients what's called the dialysis drift, right? When you accept dialysis as your new normal, you start to fall into a pattern of despair, right? And you can knock all that out by asking questions, right? And taking ownership of your treatment. Remembering that the doctors, the nurses, you're not you're not beholden to them, right? They work for you. That is a very key perspective that you have to keep, right? And don't hesitate to ask questions. Don't be shy, right? What's going to happen after they stick this needle in? Is it going to hurt? Is there ways for me to mitigate the pain, right? Um, I'm cold. Can you turn the temperature up on my machine? Um, I have somewhere to be. I can't do the whole 4 hours, right? You have to sign the paper. All right, I'll sign the paper, right? They work for you, right? So let me tell you about my first dialysis experience. So when I first learned that I had kidney disease, I was in my early 20s. I was in the Marine Corps, right? And you can learn about that whole journey and how it all went down in my book, A Gifted Tome, The 40-Day Spiritual Fast for Dialysis Patients. It's a spiritual fast, but it's laid out with my story, right? But what happened is my first treatment, I didn't have a lot of mentorship. I wasn't wise enough to ask questions, right? I had questions, but I didn't know who to ask. I didn't know what to ask. I was very young. I didn't have the confidence to ask. I didn't have a dialysis coach or someone who can guide me and tell me what questions to ask, who to ask them to when to ask them, right? So once I learned of my kidney disease and I was discharged from the Marine Corps, I was asymptomatic. I didn't have any pain or anything. So, you know, my symptoms came on rather fast. My blood pressure shot up. I was blind in one eye, and I went to the emergency room. And from there, my dialysis journey began. And I remember my first treatment. I actually drove about 60 miles to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, because that was the closest dialysis center back then. This was back in the late mid 90 early 90s, right? Wow, I'm dating myself, right? And when I first got up there, I didn't know what to expect. I had this surgery a long time ago, and they put something in my arm that I had no idea what it was, because again, I was just going with the flow. And I never really accepted what was going on in my life. I'm 20 some years old. I'm an invincible kid. I'm a Marine. Like, yeah, all right, what's going on? I'm going on dialysis. I guess dialysis, something I got to do, whatever. I smoked a fat blunt on the ride up there, like, so I'm zoned out. I go where they tell me. I sit down in the chair, and then she comes out with these long needles, and I'm like, "What's that? You sticking that thing in me?" Again, I had no idea. I didn't ask any questions. So she puts the needle in. I'm like, "Oh my God, what is that?" And then she put the other one in. I'm like, "Oh my God!" And in that moment, that 3-minute moment between the two needles going in, my whole life changed. Everything that I didn't ask, everything that I didn't know, everything that I wasn't prepared for, all crashed in on me on those needles. And I lost it. Like, I literally jumped up out of the chair, crying, bawling. I yanked the needles out of my arm. Can you imagine? There's blood squirting everywhere. They finally calmed me down and sit me down. And I'm like, is this my life now? Right? And that That whole traumatic experience could have been avoided if I had just asked questions about what to expect, right? If you're new to dialysis, you're just starting dialysis and you're going to start dialysis, ask questions, right? Ask your doctors. Ask me. That's why I'm here, right? How many of you on here remember their first dialysis treatment? Anyone? Yes, no? Put a brief story in the chat if you remember, right? Did you feel the same way? Uncertain, overwhelmed, maybe even powerless? Put a yes in the chat if you can relate, right? And I don't want to scare any of you new people, right? But it's but I have to let you know how important it is to ask questions about your journey. Don't just accept it, right? You have to be proactive, and proactive means you don't wait for things to happen and then react to them. You prepare yourself so that you're ready when they do happen, when it does happen. It reminds me of the story that my pastor really likes to talk about at Matthew, about the story of the 10 virgins. And if you don't know it, it's in Matthew 25, I believe. And it tells a story of how there were 10 virgins who were waiting on the bridegroom, and 5 of them had extra oil for their lamps, and 5 of them didn't. So the 5 who weren't prepared asked the 5 that were prepared for some of their oil, and they were like, nah, like I ain't gonna have enough for me and you, right? Go down and buy some more oil. But by the time they went to get the oil and come back, the bridegroom had took the virgins in and the door was closed. So Jesus tells this parable to have us always be prepared. Be ready so you don't have to get ready. And in this parable, he's talking about being ready for the second coming. And again, that's something you have to read and study for yourself. But for the purpose of this live training, I'm telling you that you have to be ready so that when you start dialysis, or you get when new things come that you know are coming, that you prepare for them, right? So here's the key. Like my silence on that first day, it didn't just leave me powerless in the moment. It robbed me of the chance to feel secure, right? To partner with my care team, maybe to get a dialysis coach to lead me through it, right? To gain clarity right away, right? So let me ask you this. What if dialysis isn't something that's happening to you, right? But it's something that you can actively shape by asking better questions by day one. By asking questions on day one, or even T minus 10, or T minus a year, depending on how soon you know that this day is coming, right? Now listen, now that you start asking questions, right, and you begin to take control of your care, right, there's still other traps you fall into, right? Even if you get the answers you're looking for, right, if you neglect other things like nutrition and body exercise, you can still feel stuck. So let's talk about that. Who's ready for the second mistake that new patients make? Put 2 in the chat if you're ready for the second mistake, right? So number 2 is a lot of new dialysis patients, right, ignore nutrition and movement, right? A lot of warriors think dialysis just takes care of everything, right? I don't need to change nothing. Let me just get plugged up to this machine, get what I got to get, and get out of here, right? But that's not true, right? What you eat and how you move has everything to do about, how you feel before and after treatment, right? So when you skip this, you're missing out on clearer thinking and more energy, right? And the ability to enjoy your life and your family between treatments, instead of spending your non-dialysis days recovering from the day before in dialysis. When you get caught in that loop, in that trap, that's when the dialysis drift sets in, because you feel like dialysis is taking everything from you. You feel like, I'm tired on dialysis days, and I'm tired on non-dialysis days, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. And it's simple just by what you eat and exercising, right? I know that seems so like simplistic, but it's true, right? You can go, like, it's possible. I'm telling you guys, I live it every day. You can go to dialysis, leave the place, and still live your life. You don't have to crash out, right? And that's directly tied into what you put into your body. Before treatment, a couple boiled eggs, some fruit, some protein, right? After treatment, maybe you do something a little heavier, right? You come home, you stretch a little bit, right? I know it sounds counterintuitive, but these things help keep you from, it resets your mind to know that, okay, dialysis is over. Now my body can start the rejuvenation process. Does that make sense? So I remember I used to come home from dialysis, right? I would get a Big Mac and some nuggets and 2 fries and apple pies or something, and then maybe some donuts or something, and smoke a fat blunt, right? And then come home and fall out for 4 hours, and wonder why when I woke up I was still tired, not exercising, right? Now I take protein. I have a little foot thing going on, but the doctor just cleared me to resume riding the stationary bike. But all these things are very important for post-treatment recovery, right? So guys, don't just think that I'm on dialysis, the machine is going to do everything I need it to do, and I don't have to take care of my body in any other ways, right? That's a mistake. That's a mistake. Even small things like a protein snack before or after treatment, stretching, it loosens stiffness. Maybe a little 10-minute walk. It can flip the switch from groggy to energized, right? These are the things you're going to have to try for yourself, guys, right? Because I know it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound like something that's going to work. Like, a lot of us are very tired after that. And that's natural. I get it, right? But you don't have to accept that. You can take control, right? You can take control. There's rhythms and techniques and things that I'd love to teach you about how to regain your energy after dialysis, right? And it's based on what you eat and how you move. Let me see this. Type the word energy if you'd love to feel sharper, right? And more alive on dialysis days after treatment. Those of you who are new. Those of you who haven't started yet, I hope you're taking notes, right? Hope you're taking notes on how you can avoid a lot of the things that some of us dialysis veterans have already gone through. And we had to learn the hard way, right? Right. Thank God above that, he put you in touch and put you on this live so you can get these tips so you don't have to go through it, right? Because it's not fun. It's not fun dealing with that. That leads to despair. It leads to a lot of negativity. This is the way the enemy can get his fingers and claws into you when you're not prepared, when you're not spiritually alert and spiritually aware. Just like the story in Luke when Jesus goes to pray, right? And he tells his disciples, I'm going to go over here and pray for a little bit. Y'all stay alert, but they fell asleep, right? It's important to stay prayed up and spiritually alert. So when temptation comes, you can be aware and alert and ready to defend against the Bible says the wiles of the enemy, your armor of God, right? Keeping that stuff on, guys. That's a whole nother lesson, right? But it's important that you take hold and you take control. You can't get caught in the dialysis drift, guys. You can't just accept life as is. Like, if when you're new to dialysis, you can't just accept it as your new normal. You have to be proactive and take control, right? You can't just fall into the old habits that the enemy tries to sneak in on you, right? You gotta stay prayed up and spiritually aware, right? So, energy in the chat if you want to feel, if you understand what I'm putting down here. I think you guys are tracking, right? Not a lot of engagement, but I see you guys are tracking, right? So, fueling your body is huge, of course. We just talked about it. But even if you get your nutrition and movement right, there's still one more mistake that can silently rob you of life. And that's believing that dialysis is your identity. So let's unpack this a little bit. All right, mistake three. Three's in the chat. Three's in the chat for the third mistake that new dialysis patient make, right? I've met so many warriors, like once they start dialysis, they believe their best days are behind them, right? They stop dreaming. They stop planning. They let dialysis shrink their life, right? But here's the truth. Write this down, those of you taking notes, right? Dialysis doesn't have to define you. It can refine you. Well, what do I mean by that, right? With the right tools, with the right coaching and mentorship, right? You can thrive, right? Have energy and live fully, right? That's very important, guys. And excuse me, guys. That's very important. And what I found, the key to that, and what I help my dialysis disciples do, is understand that when you're living God's purpose and God's assignment, He provides the provision. He provides everything you need, right? Imagine, like, why would God, like in Jeremiah 29:11, He says, I know the plans I have for you, right? Before you were even formed in your mother's womb, I had a plan for you, right? And when we are living outside of that plan, that's when we're vulnerable to the enemy and all the tricks and schemes of the enemy, right? But once you know your purpose and once you know your assignment and why He puts you here, you'll have the energy, you'll have the resources, right? So if you're on dialysis, if you're starting dialysis, it's because it's part of your assignment, right? Pray, ask the Father, why am I on this journey? Why am I starting dialysis? What's the reason behind it? Why am I, what's my assignment? Who am I here to help, right? And what I learned, right, is that, a spiritual fast, which was outlined in this book, right? Once you do a spiritual fast, that in itself will tell you the reason you're on dialysis. Guys, I'm not just making this up. It happened to me, right? Once I wrote this book and did this fast, God revealed to me on day 39, right, that it was my assignment and purpose to help you. That's why I'm here doing this live, guys. Even if there's nobody watching, I'm going to be here until He tells me otherwise, right? Because I know these recordings and these trainings are taped. So someone somewhere is going to see this and it's going to help them, right? And this is my way of contributing to the kingdom, right? And I'm saying all this to let you know that, right, dialysis isn't defining you, right? It's refining you. So what I like to do for people I help, is we go through the fast, right? And upon the completion of the fast, we become true dialysis disciples, right? And we spread the word and the gospel to other dialysis patients, and so on and so on. And that's how the gospel gets spread. That's how the word of God gets spread. And that's how dialysis patients come out of the dialysis drift and not out of the dialysis funk, right? So what do you miss out on if you don't shift to this belief, right? Joy, family moments, and most importantly, purpose and hope. Because once you start operating the way the Father has called you to operate, then life becomes worth living because you're doing what He called you to do. And that gives you a different type of energy while you're living, right? So remember, dialysis doesn't define you. It refines you because it gives you opportunity to get close to the Father, right? And understand the purpose that He's given you. Is everybody tracking on that? I pray that I explain that in a way that resonates with people, right? If you're starting new dialysis, if you're on dialysis for a short while, pray, ask God, right? Do this fast. Ask God why you're on dialysis and what your assignment is. Pretty certain it's going to be to help other dialysis patients, right? And that's what's going to make you a dialysis disciple, right? So let me ask you another question. What if dialysis isn't the end of your story, but the platform that God has given you to show strength and resilience? It's the platform for you to model strength and resilience for other dialysis patients who are going through what you are going through, right? God has revealed to me that there are a lot of kidney patients. There are a lot of people dealing with kidney disease. It's not something you see a lot of on TV. It's not something you advertise, but it's I'm not scared to use the word epidemic, right? There's a lot of people in early stage kidney disease, late stage kidney disease, and dialysis, right? Imagine or think about maybe this is your purpose. God put you here to be a dialysis disciple and help others. All right. So let's end with this, right? Your story doesn't end with dialysis, right? Just like it didn't end with the Apostle Paul, right? In 2 Corinthians 12, Paul talks about how he was visited, all right, by Holy Spirit God. Nothing we don't know for sure, right? But that bolstered his strength and his faith. But he goes on to talk about how he received a thorn in his flesh. And he didn't really elaborate what the thorn, quote unquote, thorn in his flesh was. But he did say something. He did say something about, Satan. So we think it was something that really got to him, whether maybe it was lust or maybe it was some type of illness. He's not certain. But here's the thing. He didn't let it stop him, right? He didn't let him stop him from writing half the New Testament. Just like you're on dialysis and you have kidney disease, you can't let it stop you from doing what God's called you to do. Most likely, dialysis is part of what he called you to do. And that's the mindset and belief that you have to accept, guys. You can't fall into despair about it, right? And when Paul asked him 3 times to take that thorn from his flesh, God said, quote, "My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness." Come on, guys, right? That's just basically saying, listen, right? You can't. I blessed you so much that I'm not gonna let you get all big up on your haunches and britches, right? Right? I gotta keep you in your place, right? Without this thorn in your flesh, you might run off and think that you have all the power, right? So Paul realized that even though the thorn never left, it became the very place where God's power could be seen most clearly. Come on, guys. I know y'all tracking right here. I know y'all can put two and two together. Think about that. Paul went on to write letters that shaped the early church, to mentor leaders and to spread gospel across the nations, right? All while carrying this quote unquote thorn in his flesh and this burden. He didn't let the thorn define him. And neither should you let the dialysis define you, right? Instead, let it refine you and let God's strength show through your weakness. Come on, guys. Who's picking up what I'm putting down here, right? So let's recap, family, right? We talked about the 3 biggest mistakes that patients make when starting dialysis. First, not asking enough questions, which leaves you powerless to control your journey. 2, ignoring nutrition and movement. That steals your energy and clarity, mental clarity, right? And 3rd, believing that dialysis defines you, which robs you of joy and, most importantly, your purpose, right? Avoiding these 3 mistakes is how you step into your treatment with confidence, clarity, and hope, right? All right, guys. I know that was valuable for you, right? And I appreciate you all being here, right? But before we go, I'm gonna ask you something else. Right? How many of you want to walk in your dialysis journey with confidence and hope, right? But you feel stuck because you don't know where to start, right? And it's difficult to get there alone. You'll have blind spots, things you can't see. Might be your strategy, or might even be your mindset. Either way, you need guidance so you can actually thrive instead of survive. And that's what I specialize in, guys. My coaching is the gold standard in this industry, and it's designed for dialysis warriors who want to reclaim their energy, sharpen their mental clarity, and live fully again, right? Right? As I mentioned, it's the gold standard for breaking free from fatigue and hopelessness, right? So if you're ready to take your life back and not let dialysis define you, here's what you do. Comment the word coach below or send me a DM. Coach in the comments, right? And here's what will happen. I'll reach out to you personally. We'll have a quick conversation on the phone. Talk about what's going on in your journey, right? And I'll give you a clear, actionable plan for your situation right now, right where you are, right? And if I can't help, which I'm sure I can, all right, I'll point you to someone or something else that can. But if I can, it might be the best decision you ever make for your health and your hope, right? So drop coach in the comments if you're ready, right? All right, so who got value from the night's training? Comment value down below, right? I love to hear what hit home for you, right? There's a lot of room for a lot of characters in the chat, guys. Go put it on in there. I want to hear y'all stories, right? And if you're catching the replay, don't forget to comment too. I see everyone, and I respond to everyone. So thank you everyone for joining tonight. Warriors, you are not alone, and you are not finished. And your life is still worth living, even on dialysis. I'll see you on the next training.